So I was at the Bitcoin Nashville conference last year. I was sitting in the second row. I waited for about 2.5, 3 hours, really holding in having to go to the bathroom because Donald Trump came out and announced that he wanted to have the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the Proof of Words podcast. It's great to finally get you on. For those of you that don't know, Alex is the managing director of High-Tech Gründerfonds. It's Germany's largest venture capital group. And on top of that, he is a very, very avid Bitcoiner. I have one of the distinct pleasures of being the founder of a company I was CEO of that High-Tech Gründerfonds invested in. This is iconic, ended up becoming Deutsche Digital Assets. Alex and his team were one of our very first investors, so it's an absolute pleasure here to have you on the podcast, Alex.
Hi Pat, yeah, happy to be there. And yeah, I mean, you're one of the front runners in the crypto, especially Bitcoin space, I guess. And yeah, happy to be on the podcast.
So I was at the Bitcoin Nashville conference last year. I was sitting in the second row. I waited for about 2.5, 3 hours, really holding in having to go to the bathroom because Donald Trump came out and announced that he wanted to have the strategic Bitcoin reserve, right? And it was worth it. The room went absolutely wild. It's something we were all expecting and really hoping for. And it's something that, similar to you, I think Bitcoin as one of the most valuable commodities on earth, every country should have a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. It just makes such inherent sense to me. But yesterday, and there's been some speculation about this for some time. Yesterday, he announces that there will also be Solana, Cardano, and XRP in this strategic crypto reserve. It's no longer a strategic Bitcoin reserve, it's a strategic crypto reserve. And then, of course, he throws in, yes, I also mean Bitcoin and Ethereum. I guess he thought Bitcoin and Ethereum would be self-evident if he's mentioning these other three, which, okay, fine, that makes sense. But I look at, I mean, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a Bitcoiner. For me, Bitcoin is the only one that I do believe has any fundamental, tangible value. But that doesn't mean that I don't see I don't, it doesn't mean that I don't see the rationale of others finding value in Ethereum, Solana, even Cardano, I guess, to a certain extent. XRP and Ripple can go fuck themselves as far as I'm concerned. But for me, it's Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, but I'm not going to shun other people for seeing value in other things. With that said, I don't look at Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, and XRP in the same light as I do Bitcoin in the sense that I don't think they are commodities. I don't think they are currencies in the way that Bitcoin checks all of the boxes of what I see as the most perfect form of money humanity's ever conceived. So while I get that they're trying to maybe uplift the entire crypto community as a whole, and he's doing this, I think, more despite the Biden administration than he is maybe actually thinking that there's real value in these other coins. For me, I think it really should only be Bitcoin, though. Bitcoin is the only one that fundamentally makes sense being a strategic reserve asset.
Yeah, I kind of agree because Bitcoin is the only truly decentralized, unchangeable, uncontrollable crypto asset. The other ones are not. So it does make sense in a way to just focus on Bitcoin. Regarding the reserve, I'm a little bit, also, I think there's pluses and minuses.
Mhm.
If they do the reserve, the Bitcoiners go like, oh, reserve, the price goes up. Yeah, that's what we want. I think that's, I think that's not, I think that's too, that's
I
too
hate people that just
easy.
focus on the price. I mean, that's what mainstream and retail look at, but that's not what Bitcoiners, the real Bitcoiners, I think, care about.
Yeah, totally. So I think if the motivation is to like a pump and dump scheme, if they pump up the price because they announce the reserve, and then they dump it at some point again, either that administration or even the next administration, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it just creates confusion and distrust in the market. And yesterday, a few minutes I think or so before the announcement of Trump, there was a 200 million 50x
I saw that.
leverage position opened on Bitcoin and Ether. And obviously that position has performed extremely well. And if that's the motivation to front run an announcement, whoever did that, we don't know, of course,
Yeah.
to front run an announcement and to pump up the price, I think it's wrong. They should not do the crypto reserve at all. I mean, not not in
That's
Bitcoin.
insider trading as far as I'm
It's
concerned. And I
insider
guess
trading, and but then also the motivation behind the reserve is to have an impact on the price, and that's wrong. I mean, they shouldn't do it. If and that so they should not do it if that's the motivation. If the
Mhm.
motivation is to have a long-term asset, long-term store value asset, similar to gold, which they hold for decades, hopefully, which they hold for decades, and that long-term reserve has some functions. So in case of emergency, they can use it, they can transport it around the world, then it would make sense. And then I support it. And I think it really depends on what their true motivation is. And we don't know because Trump is so hard to understand. And sometimes even
And
he
good luck
himself
predicting
maybe
them.
yeah, that doesn't understand because one day he does this and the other day he does that. And that's, I think, the reason why the price is sitting at around 100,000 or 90,000 now, because there's significant doubt in the market that he will follow up in a good way on the reserve. If I mean, if
Yeah.
the reserve is just to pump up the price and then a year later he's going to sell it and realize some profit, we don't need it. I mean, it doesn't. I think it doesn't make any sense. So the reserve should be directed towards stabilizing the currency, stabilizing financial markets, creating some modesty in, I mean, in the government expenditure, like
Hmm.
not spending the money on nonsense, but instead of storing the value of the money, maybe in Bitcoin. I think that's. I mean, if you ask Bitcoiners who start accumulating Bitcoin, they tend to be much more careful with their spending. They
Hmm.
don't spend on things they don't need, and that makes sense. That's good for the planet. It preserves the resources. It reduces pollution of the planet. If you use less plastic, I guess, if you spend less on cheap stuff, that makes sense. So it disciplines the spending and it focuses the resources on where they have the largest impact. So if the governments would do that too, I think it makes sense. I totally support that. If it's a pump and dump scheme,